Geek Therapy Radio.
Against all society, school was propriety. Used to raise my hand, but the teacher kept ignoring me. More concerned with the fifth level than the fifth grade. Street Fighter, Mario Kart, and Streets of Rage became the only place I learned to communicate. Now I'm all about these gold coins, selling all these power-ups, surviving off of mushrooms and only trying to level up. Yeah. Now I walk in the malls and I appear honest, but they don't really know that my Metal Gear Solid hit A, be a robber, hit X, go to college. Points are the same as long as you beat the game. Life may suck, but nothing stays the same. Dues for life, flip a token, make a change. I'm deranged, the people that see things the same. I see in full color, I just choose to be green. Hey, everything gets better. Whatever happened way back when, now it just don't matter.
Welcome to Geek Therapy Radio. I'm your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger, as usual. The song you're listening to right now, that will, of course, pick up where we left off again as I bump out of the podcast, is a band called Red Gold Green, although they spell it RDGLDGRN. RDGLDGRN, Red Gold Green. The song is called Power Ups, and I've played snippets of it in the past on Geek Therapy Radio. Just snippets, but I've never really officially acknowledged it. One of the freeform things that doing the podcast allows me to do is I can do whatever the heck I want and play as much of a song as I want, really, if I wanted to showcase music, and I'm a big geek about music, so I basically choose songs for the podcast that I'm feeling that day. So whether I'm in a heavy metal mood, whether I'm in a hip hop mood, whether I'm in a synth mood, a rock mood, a blues mood, classic rock mood, doesn't matter. Whatever I'm feeling that day. And this is a song that I've had on the back burner just of my show for a long time, and I'm enjoying getting the chance to feature it fully here. So we will rejoin that song. We'll pick up where we left off at the end of the podcast, of course. So in this podcast, I want to talk about some big news out of Apple. The MacBook Pro 16 is officially here. You can go order it now on the Apple website if you are rolling in the ducats. So I want to talk about the MacBook Pro 16 and some promising business tactics by Apple, at least in regards to the MacBook Pro. But we'll get into that in a moment. First, I want to acknowledge something that I keep forgetting to acknowledge. It's only been out for a few days or so, but I've done a whole podcast, whole segments on the new Sonic the Hedgehog movie back when it was first announced in the first trailers, and the horrible backlash because of the horrible design, the nightmare fuel design of Sonic the Hedgehog. Nobody got it. Nobody understood why the studio designed Sonic the Hedgehog that way. Skinny legs, he had more human attributes, a mouthful of big, like, horse teeth. It didn't make any sense. He didn't look anything at all like the video game character that most of us grew up with. Sonic the Hedgehog has always been this kind of this character with attitude, and of course he looked very cartoony. Real hedgehogs do not look like this. We all know that. But he was basically Sega's Mario. He was a lovable character, had more attitude than Mario because Sega claimed to be a faster system with its blast processing. The bit wars, 16-bit wars. Sega was no faster than the Super Nintendo, effectively. That was all just marketing jargon. But to promote this perceived edge, this fast edge of the Sega over Nintendo, Sega's slogan was, Sega does what Nintendo don't. And their speedy mascot was Sonic the Hedgehog. Either way, the movie studio behind Sonic the Hedgehog has pulled the old trailer. You can probably still find it online, I'm sure. But they went back to the drawing board with the design of Sonic the Hedgehog. I don't suspect that they went completely back to the drawing board. because Sonic in the movie now looks like the Sonic the Hedgehog roughly that we grew up with. I still would have preferred the Sonic the Hedgehog movie just to be completely CGI or completely animated. It's kind of weird that why did they have to bring Sonic the Hedgehog into the real human world? I guess it's a movie and it's all make-believe, but it's kind of like, they did the same thing with Pikachu. So, whatever on that point. I'm just saying I would have preferred it to be all Sonic's world without him interacting with real human characters. But I am happy for the design change. He looks way, way better. Now, you can see the new trailer. I'll post a link to the trailer below. Just because Sonic looks better doesn't mean that the movie looks better. The movie still looks very meh. It looks fun. And maybe it is fun. And I really, really doubt that I'm going to see it in theaters because I don't see most things in theaters. Sometimes I see movies in theaters if I'm just really, really hyped about it. But while I appreciate that the studio went back and totally redid Sonic for this movie, Sonic's look for this movie, they re-rendered him, it's still not enough to make me want to go shell out $15 or whatever to watch it. I have a feeling that if I had kids, I would take them to see it. But I'm probably going to wait as an adult for it to come to a streaming service. And even then, it'd probably be a while before I get around to watching it. Side note, and we'll come back to Sonic in a second before moving on to MacBook Pro, 16-inch MacBook Pro. I am getting caught up again with Star Wars. There are so many Star Wars movies. I have complained once or twice on this show that, no, I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan, but I've seen all 6 episodes of Star Wars, but there's so much other content, and I'm just getting caught up with that. So it's going to be a little while before I think I sit down with any other movie. I'm just going to hammer through all the filler Star Wars movies. I hope that's not egregious for me to say filler Star Wars movie. I'm watching Solo, and it's good. It's okay. Maybe I have to be a bigger Star Wars nut to fully appreciate it. It's not bad. It's just, it doesn't have the same, I don't think any Star Wars movie would have the same just on wonder that the original episodes had in the 70s and 80s when it was brand new. But it's good. And to each their own. You may like all the extra Star Wars movies. I don't know how much of the animated movies I'm going to get into, but as far as like official Star Wars theatrical releases, I'm catching up on those because I feel like I almost have a duty to, and I enjoy doing it. That's just fine. But yeah, so back to Sonic. Oh, what was I gonna say? Oh man, I completely lost my train of thought with what I wanted to mention about the Sonic movie. Oh yeah, I wanted to address something that even I suggested several months ago when the first trailer came out for the new Sonic the Hedgehog movie, and I was part of not the outrage. I guess it's not outrageous. How outraged can you really be? But I still thought that Sonic was hideous, and no one's going to see it because Sonic looks like a freaking horror show. I mentioned that I wouldn't be surprised if this was a conspiracy of the studio to generate publicity for the movie, because even negative publicity is good publicity. That no one would care if Sonic just looked the way we were used to seeing Sonic, that they were going to drum up all this. They were going to make Sonic trend, make the Sonic movie trend by making it terrible. And maybe people will go see it out of curiosity for how terrible it is. I fully retract that notion, because the more I think about it, the more preposterous that it turns out to be. Here's why. It's not cheap. Even if they just made the trailer. One thing I mentioned is maybe they just made the trailer look horrible, and maybe they had their actual Sonic the Hedgehog movie all done. They just made the trailer look terrible to drum up hype, basically, about the movie. they had already shipped out a lot of promotional material. And this movie was supposed to come out, I think this fall. I think it was supposed to come out soon. It's been pushed back, by the way, to February 14th, Valentine's Day, for whatever reason that is. But apparently they sent out all sorts of promotional materials. So, all the cardboard cutouts and movie posters and stuff they put up in the theaters to get people excited about the new Sonic the Hedgehog movie coming out. So they had already invested, millions of dollars, millions of dollars into this enterprise. And why would you, the more I thought about it, why would you, pour so much money into a hoax? Like, that's an awfully big bet to make, that you will spend millions of dollars on generating negative publicity, because any publicity is good, when you could just not risk all that money and just make the movie as best as you think you could make it. So, no, I don't think it was a controversy at all. I don't think this was on purpose. I don't think it's a conspiracy theory. I just think that they made a mistake. They made a mistake the first time with the first rendering. And what boggles my mind is that what focus group did they put, the first initial cut in front of? The focus group said, yeah, everything looks good, I'd watch this movie. What age group? What demographic? You have a swath of multiple generations at this point, maybe a couple generations at this point. Generation X for sure. Whatever, me, a millennial, iGen. You have multiple generations now that are familiar with Sonic the Hedgehog and know what Sonic the Hedgehog looks like. So what group of senior citizens do they sit down in the focus group and say, this is supposed to be a children's movie? Do you think it would work as a children's movie? Maybe. I don't think that's normally how focus groups work. They try to get kind of a general audience, a target audience. Were they trying to target the Sonic the Hedgehog movie towards people who are completely unfamiliar with Sonic? I highly doubt it. Why would they do that? That makes no sense for a video game movie, for them to make a video game movie and target it to people who have no idea what the video game is. You think Nintendo was trying to target the Pokemon movies to people outside of, the demographic that would know Pokemon? Yes, a lot of people have heard of Pokemon, even elderly people, but they might not have any sort of heartfelt attachment to it. So what focus group that at least knew what Sonic the Hedgehog was saw that first screening with that nightmare fuel Sonic the Hedgehog and gave it the thumbs up? Yeah, I changed a few things. Scenes didn't work. I know this is produced, directed by Fast and Furious dude, but maybe changed. Some story was hard to follow or whatever. But Sonic, yeah, he looks fine. Yeah, let's look at the Sega Genesis artwork. Yeah, that's close enough. Horrific. So I'm glad they changed it. And I don't think there's any conspiracy or hoax they were trying to pull with making Sonic look terrible at first, because that was a multi-million-dollar bet if it was a hoax. So I don't think it is. Not a conspiracy. All right, the MacBook Pro 16-inch. The 16-inch MacBook Pro. There were three areas of major of most controversy when it came to the 15-inch MacBook Pro. So if you remember, those three areas of most controversy were thermal throttling, the butterfly keyboard, and the touch bar. So first, thermal throttling. Apple had made the MacBook Pro 15-inch model so thin that it could not possibly, it was bound by the laws of physics. It could not possibly dissipate the heat generated by the CPU or the GPU, the processor or the graphics card. It couldn't possibly do it. So you remember, there's always like a gate with Apple stuff. So bend gate with the MacBook Pro 15 2018 i9 model, it was throttle gate. Basically, the laptop was thermal throttling down below base clock. Base clock is the target clock that a processor should never dip below. So, for instance, it should be, in a MacBook, I think it was 2.3 or 2.4 gigahertz. So they promised a turbo boost up to 4.8 gigahertz, but the base clock was 2.3 or 2.4 gigahertz. I can't remember. The point is that while it can throttle itself down for safety reasons to protect itself, go down at most to bare minimum, that base clock of 2.4 gigahertz, it should never go below 2.4 gigahertz. And the 2018 MacBook Pro i9 was throttling down below, at least briefly below even base clock, and that was unacceptable. Remember, these devices cost thousands upon thousands of dollars, and they have Pro in the name. How pro is it to be crippled? Especially pro for it to be crippled for the sake of thinness and vanity. If it's a professional device, it should not be thermal throttling like that. Thermal throttling is acceptable in most thin and light devices, of course, because of just the nature of what they are. But that was too much. Apple flew too close to the sun with cramming all that horsepower in a chassis that could not handle it by the laws of physics. It was not magic. It could not perform magic and somehow maintain speeds above base clock without going under it, without a better thermal solution. So they crammed all the power in there and they crippled it with the physics itself. So that was one area of major controversy with the current MacBook Pros up until now. And we'll get to that with the 16-inch MacBook Pro that replaces the 15-inch MacBook Pro, outgoing 15-inch MacBook Pro. So the second was that butterfly keyboard. Needless to say, even people who couldn't care less about thermal throttling, let's say all you did is type emails and type papers and sit at Starbucks and type up your screenplay, you're not going to hit the processor that hard to throttle it. You paid $2,500, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 for something to look trendy and type on, basically, is what it amounted to. Those people never experienced thermal throttling. Their fans hardly ever kicked up in the first place. They never taxed the system that hard to be typing in Microsoft Word, basically, or whatever program they used. So they didn't care about thermal throttling, but they would sure notice the keyboard missing strokes or repeating letters after they've lifted their finger up. There's all sorts of problems with the butterfly keyboard and the scissor switches underneath. So much so that Apple had to extend the keyboard repair warranty to keep up with all the units that were coming back with faulty butterfly keyboards. And I stated many moons ago that there's no way the 2016 or the 16-inch MacBook Pro would have a crappy keyboard. There's no way that the Apple would keep going with something a design so terrible. Not because I don't think I put past Apple to put a bad design out there, but because now it's costing them money. They have to make all these repairs. It's costing them money. So there's no way they're going to keep letting that happen. So the keyboard in the 16-inch MacBook Pro supposedly is much better. I have not got my hands on it. Even if I did have my hands on it, only time will tell when it comes to reliability of the new design. They're calling the new keyboard the Magic Keyboard. Frankly, the only magic will be whether or not it's reliable over time. But again, only time will tell. That said, there is an increase in comfort. Most people would agree that a little bit more key travel is more comfortable. The old keyboards didn't have much. The old butterfly keyboards didn't have much key travel, and a lot of people who are typing, those Starbucks warriors or whoever, people doing actual work, would complain that it was a bit like typing on concrete after the while because there's no cushion, basically, with the typing with the keyboard. Some people didn't mind this. Some people like the keyboard, the feel of the keyboard. But most people would prefer a little bit more travel. So the new quote-unquote Magic Keyboard is supposed to be more reliable in terms of dust getting underneath the keys and making the keyboard freak out. But it should be more comfortable too, because now there is 1 millimeter of travel with the keys. So there's more distance between the up and down position. It should feel better to type on. So we'll see. Point is that Apple has addressed the issue. Going back to thermal throttling, they've addressed that issue too. I'm sorry I didn't mention that earlier. They have increased the surface area of the heat sinks by 35%. 35% more surface area of the heat sink and fins of the heat sink. That's major. That is major, major, major. Also, 28% better fan performance. They've had more fins in the fan. The fans can move more air and they're a little bit bigger. All of this means that the dimensions, which are negligibly bigger than the 15-inch model, negligibly, at its most, it is a 1/4 of an inch wider than the outgoing 15-inch model, which means that most 15-inch cases should house the 16-inch model just fine. It might be a little bit tighter fit, but that's one thing. So it's not much bigger. However, it is, what is it? It's 0.06 millimeters thicker. No, 7. It is a little bit less than a millimeter thicker than the 2015 model, or than the 15-inch model. So the 16-inch MacBook Pro is a little less than a millimeter thicker than the 15-inch MacBook Pro. That's wonderful. A lot of us have said we will sacrifice if these engineers and product makers will take a phone or any sort of thin and light device that is just a smidge thicker if it means we can have more battery and better performance. Apple listened and they said, you know what? We have to address these thermal issues. We're going to give it better cooling capability, even though it costs us a little bit less than a millimeter in thickness, because you're not going to notice that. You're not going to notice that increase in thickness at all unless you have both devices, the 15-inch, old 15-inch and the new 16-inch right next to each other. You're not going to notice it. But we get all the benefit of better cooling now. So now you can cram. So there's better cooling to the degree of 12 watts. They've allowed for 12 more watts of cooling headroom. 12 watts is massive in devices like this. The chip, the 9900HK, 9th generation Core i9 8-core processor, has a TDP of 45 watts, up to 45 watts. So if you increase the cooling capacity of the system by 12 watts, that's a massive jump in cooling capacity. Very welcome. So I think that the benchmarks, we haven't seen them yet, the benchmarks for cooling capacity for the MacBook Pro, I don't think we're going to have throttle gate anymore. I think it's going to be able to more effectively cool the processor inside, which is very welcome. Okay, so the third area of controversy that Apple has addressed is the Touch Bar. Some people love the Touch Bar. More people hated the Touch Bar. Most people didn't care. So the biggest complaint with the Touch Bar among those people complaining about the Touch Bar is they removed physical keys. Especially, they removed a physical escape key. So, Apple has added a physical escape key. They've added it back, and they've shrunk the Touch Bar by all that much to make room for the physical escape key again. So they didn't remove the Touch Bar, but they compromised and gave us a physical escape key again. That is massive. So here's how I'm going to wrap this all up. The biggest takeaway for me, because I really doubt I'm going to buy a 16-inch MacBook Pro. I would love to be able to afford one. And the reason why I'm excited for the 16-inch MacBook Pro, and if I had the money, why I would consider buying it, is because Apple has made a turn for the better in recent years versus recent years. It used to be, remember with the iPhone 4, had reception issues, problems with reception. And Apple said this was due to users holding the phone wrong and blocking the antenna. So we're Apple's old modus operandi was to blame the end user for the problem. There's even Apple apologist for Throttlegate with the 2018 MacBook Pro saying it's throttling because you're not using optimized software. No, thank you very much, but no, it's throttling because it was designed poorly. So Apple has changed their tone. They heard the complaints, especially in these three areas with thermal design, keyboard design, and the touch bar, and they addressed them directly. They re-engineered them. They listened to the consumer. And that is a credit where credit is due. That's a massive thumbs up from me to Apple. Enough that if I had the money, I would consider a 16-inch MacBook Pro, because I know, or I feel that, at least with the MacBook Pro is concerned, that at least Apple has shown that in this case, they are listening to consumers. We're the ones paying them, by the way. Why? Of course, they should listen to the consumers. So it's kind of like an olive branch. It's a rare olive branch from Apple. Said, yeah, you guys complain about these things a lot, so we address them directly. Wonderful. What a wonderful change of pace for the house that Jobs built. I'm trying to get my hands on a 16-inch model just to review. We'll see how that goes. I certainly will not be buying one anytime soon, but hopefully I can review one for you guys. Pop it up on YouTube. Have some fun with it. And I think that's all. So we're going to return now on the way out to RD. I keep trying to remember. RDGLD GRN, Red Gold Green, with their song Power Ups. Of course, I don't approve of any sort of drug usage references, but it's art. It's art. They can say whatever the heck they want, and it's a cool song because it talks about video games. So be good to yourselves and others. Remember that we're all geeks about something, so embrace your inner geek. Know that you are worthy of love, both giving love and receiving love. And I'll see you tomorrow.
I'm feeling like a color everywhere I go, defining somebody, depicting on my soul. Addicted to the form, possessed by the glow. Never see the road, I'm already at my goal. I wish you were like me, I wish you could know that if you were like me, you'd never be alone. Restricted by my pain, pleasure comes in fortunes. Lonely are the brave whose heart is in a corset. I am just a portion of a living whole. That's why I devote this to every living soul. I don't need a brag, cause I am in control of every single fiber and every little bone. You're just a biter, a copy, a drone. This is an art piece, you'd make a song. Need no opinion, I'm thinking on my own. Take this as simple, revolution. I'm gone.
Hey, everything gets better. Whatever happened way back when, now it just don't matter. Hey, everything gets better. Whatever happened way back when, now it just don't matter. Hey, everything gets better. Whatever happened way back when, now it just don't matter. Hey, everything gets better. Whatever happened way back when, now it just don't matter.
Geek Therapy Radio, Saturday night at 10 on KPRC 950. Or listen anytime on our iHeartRadio app.